Breaking today, royal fury as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle disgustingly hijack the centenary celebrations of the late Queen Elizabeth II, despite the fact that members of this family who were at Buckingham Palace yesterday have not forgotten.
Of people around the Queen thought Meghan was, by the end, showing narcissistic tendencies. And the Queen was famously good at concealing her true thoughts.
To avoid phone calls from Harry, or she'd make sure that someone was with her because she would end up so distressed because he would be shouting down the phone at her over the security, over what he wanted.
Exclusively told me, it gives me PTSD. It's classic Meghan, literally a workplace psychopath, smiling to the public on one side of her face and glowering at you on the secret side. The woman treats anyone she has power over as totally disposable. You are just treated like a tradesman who is there to fix the toilet.
The centenary of Queen Elizabeth II's birth brought two very different moments into sharp focus, and no one needed to explain the contrast. The working royals gathered at Buckingham Palace for a deeply moving tribute. Catherine shared a quiet, emotional moment with Tony Gladhill, an eight-year-old George Cross recipient who showed up carrying the final wish of his late wife she had specifically asked him to attend before she passed. That moment, it hit different. At that exact same time, Meghan's team was making very different moves. Influencer gift boxes were going out timed with surgical precision to land during the centenary. The candles inside, described using the children's royal titles. Handwritten calligraphy letters painted this cozy picture, afternoons picking flowers with Lilibet and snuggling with Archie on quiet evenings. Carefully crafted, carefully timed. Meanwhile, Harry was briefing Town and Country magazine, his go-to sympathetic outlet.
But as the Royal News Network posted, I'm sorry, but why the heck does Meghan Markle think that anyone wants to be reminded of picking flowers with Lily or snuggling with Archie? If these were made for her own personal consumption, sure, but I don't get why in this world.
Especially after Omid Scobie's reduced visibility, telling them he had personally sent flowers to Queen Elizabeth II's burial site at Windsor. The magazine's digital deputy editor, operating as his primary soft landing platform, ran with it. They reported it wasn't even his first time, noting that on the one-year anniversary of her passing in 2023, he had visited St. George's Chapel. The flowers briefing is the moment that says everything about Harry's complicated relationship with public gesture and private claim. The story lands one way, but the mechanics behind it tell another. The article used the word privately to describe Harry's visit, but that word doesn't survive contact with what came next, a press release to a national magazine announcing the private gesture. The moment you pick up the phone and brief a journalist on your own quiet act of remembrance, it stops being quiet. It stops being private. It stops being about the person in the ground. Sending flowers to a grave means something, but only when nobody's watching. It's the kind of thing you do because you loved someone, because you want to honor them without an audience. The second you call a journalist to report the specific tenderness of the gesture, you've turned an act of grief into a press operation.
Queen is buried, of course, alongside her parents and her husband there. They wrote this is not his first time having flowers brought to her burial site. He has had them both sent and hand-delivered on multiple prior occasions. Oh, isn't he a little good Samaritan? Maybe he shouldn't have tried to kill her. In 2023, on the one-year anniversary of her death, Prince Harry visited St. George's Chapel privately. I mean, it's just nonsense, isn't it? No, can I just say, nothing is private.
The flowers become the vehicle. The credit becomes the point. This isn't a small observation about bad manners. This is a direct window into how Harry actually operates. And his track record with Queen Elizabeth II in her final years makes it land even harder. He reportedly shouted at her over the phone about security and family fallout. He turned down invitations to visit when she was unwell, including in the final week of her life. He produced a Netflix documentary where the Commonwealth, the institutional work she dedicated her life to, was handed over to critical commentary for commercial content. He wrote a memoir full of characterizations of private family moments. And then, after all of that, he sent flowers to her grave and issued a press release. Now enter Robert Hardman, and this part matters. Hardman isn't some voice in the online royal commentary world. He is the most established royal columnist in the British press, with decades of institutional access built on trust.
If the moment after you have done this so-called good deed, you pick up your phone and you say, "Town and Country, I just sent the flowers, get the poster." Seriously, it's not private.
He writes for the Daily Mail in a register specifically designed not to burn the relationships that access depends on. So, when Hardman reports that people very close to the Queen were in no doubt that she had detected narcissistic behavior on the part of Meghan, he is not throwing around opinions. He is reporting what the Queen's inner circle told him directly, and he's doing it knowing exactly how sensitive that disclosure is. The specific details in Hardman's account are worth sitting with. He describes the Queen's early approach to Meghan as genuinely thoughtful, real consideration about which patronages to offer, which platforms might work, what would give her a meaningful role. The Queen thought about it long and hard, which patronages would reflect her own values while also working for Meghan. Those patronages were embraced at first, and then, in Hardman's own words, torn up. The response from those around the Queen moved through bafflement, then frustration, then a firm conclusion she had been let down. By both of them. Narcissistic tendencies were identified specifically in Meghan's conduct, and this account doesn't stand alone. It lines up with every other credible source that has spoken on this. The wiring concern, confirmed by Hugo Vickers.
Their children's titles to flog her candles. Absolutely disgraceful. But the king clearly sees nothing wrong in this because he's allowing it to continue.
The decision to never allow Meghan in private meetings without others present, confirmed by Lady Colin Campbell. The source who told Rebecca English with complete certainty that the Australian tour was exactly what the Queen had tried to prevent from happening. Then there are the phone calls, accounts describing Harry shouting about security and family dynamics until the Queen ended up distressed. Accounts so serious that others had to be present because the calls were too overwhelming for her to handle alone toward the end of her life. Multiple independent sources, multiple time periods, all pointing to the same reality. The relationship between Harry and Queen Elizabeth II in her final years was not the story of a devoted grandson and his beloved grandmother. This wasn't a loving family relationship in its final chapter. It was someone pressing specific demands onto a person who was very old, very unwell, and simply not in a position to push back with the kind of institutional force that might have actually resolved anything. Then came the Sussex Survivors Club, and that name alone should tell you something. Through Tom Sykes' reporting on the so-called death stare footage, former staff members who used the term Sussex survivors to describe their time working for the couple came forward.
Harry and Meghan plan to be half in, half out royals, and you added, Tash, "I just can't with this anymore." Harry and Meghan are still on the royal family website, and it makes it look like they work for the king. They have completely gone back on the Sandringham Agreement, declared war against Prince William and Catherine, making money off their title.
On the record, they said the footage of Meghan directing a hard, cold stare at her chief of staff gave them PTSD. One former staffer didn't hold back, calling Meghan a workplace psychopath, smiling to the public on one side of her face and glaring at you on the other when no one important is watching. That is not a casual insult. Workplace psychopath is a specific term from occupational psychology. It describes a very particular pattern charm switched on for the outside world, coldness reserved for the people underneath you, and a systematic use of power to control those who can't easily fight back. And the pattern keeps showing up across multiple dimensions. The staff turnover alone from 16 employees down to 5 since the move. Former employees who shared their experiences with Tom Bower for the Betrayal biography, only to have those accounts dismissed by the couple's operation as part of a coordinated media attack. Then there's Gavin Burrows, who walked back his own witness statement in the Daily Mail proceedings. The story of someone who discovered that cooperating with the Sussex legal machine came with its own consequences. And the Shukar-sent ballet lawsuit, describing yet another situation where someone who wouldn't simply go along faced a particular kind of pressure.
Of people around the Queen thought Meghan was by the end showing narcissistic tendencies. And the Queen was famously good at concealing her true thoughts. I mean, on other issues, for example, people who are very close to her swore blind to me that she was in favour of Brexit. People who were very close to her swore blind she was against.
The pattern in every single case is identical. Anyone who works with or for Harry and Meghan and runs into trouble gets recast by the couple's team labelled a liar, a plant, a media puppet, someone out to destroy the Sussex brand. The possibility that the accounts are simply accurate and that the behaviour they describe is consistent is becoming harder and harder to wave away under the weight of so much independent, overlapping testimony. And then there was Catherine at Buckingham Palace on the exact same day as the Flowers press release, the influencer candle boxes, and the centenary coverage play. An eight-year-old, recently widowed man, Tony Gladhill, showed up. She found him, she sat with him, she told him to stay in touch. Her voice was soft. She even mentioned openly to the women around her that big events are hard for her because she's always being told to speak up. She wasn't performing anything. She was sharing the difficulty of the moment with the people right in front of her. The camera caught what it caught, her hand over his, the warmth, the realness, no staging, no press release afterward. Just the institution doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and doing it quietly. No managed photo ops, no approved pool photographers, no calligraphy letters, no influencer boxes, no magazine briefings, just a woman with a soft voice at a formal event, finding an eight-year-old widower who showed up because his late wife made him promise to, and making him feel, in that moment,
A thought given to giving her patronages that meant a lot to the Queen, and rather like with the tiara, she'd sort of thought about it long and hard. Well, why don't we give Meghan this? Because this will really work for, this is a good platform for her. Those sort of things that were initially embraced by the couple, and then just sort of torn up.
that every bit of her attention was real. Because it was. The contrast the centenary day made for itself needed no commentary. On one side, a genuine human moment, quiet and unrehearsed. On the other, candle boxes going out to influencers, a Flowers press release landing at Town and Country, and the children's royal titles appearing in commercial product descriptions. Both happened in public view. Both are now part of the permanent record. The institution honouring its founder. The alternative operation deploying her nickname in product copy. On the same day, Hardman's finding, carefully worded but impossible to misread, is the institutional confirmation that the independent record has been building toward for years. The Queen was let down by both of them. Those closest to her, the ones who watched the relationship move from a generous and thoughtful welcome all the way through to distressing phone calls, refused invitations, and a Netflix documentary detected narcissistic behavior in Meghan and concluded that the trust placed in both of them had been completely betrayed. She saw it. She knew. Her final years carried the specific weight of someone who had opened the door wide, offered what was genuinely within her power to give.
About how, she used to avoid phone calls from Harry, or she'd make sure that someone was with her because she would end up so distressed because he would be shouting down the phone at her over the security, over what he wanted. The fallout with the family. He was expecting her to clean it all up for him, as people have done. The royal family made a rob for their own back with Harry. He's the perfect living example of why you teach your children actions have consequences, why you shouldn't give in to them. The same with Meghan, really.
And then watched it get met with the full force of a commercial, legal, and media operation. The flowers Harry sent to her grave on her centenary are the gesture of someone who understands, on some level, the magnitude of what happened. The press release he sent to Town and Country on the same day is the gesture of someone who still cannot resist turning that sentiment into a story. She remains in the hearts of those who understood what she was and what she built. The centenary confirmed it. The flowers and the candles confirmed in a very different way exactly what she had seen coming and tried, back in January 2020, to stop. Now, the sharpest question the centenary raises isn't about Harry and Meghan, it's about Charles. Is the king operating in the institutional interest that his heir represents? Or is he being pulled by the personal interest his relationship with his younger son creates? The working royals were at Buckingham Palace. The royal website still lists Harry and Meghan. The palace has briefed that there are no plans to strip titles or remove them from the line of succession. And on Centenary Day, the candle descriptions ran with the children's royal titles. The Flowers press release went out, and there was no institutional response. None. Those who have consistently supported the monarchy are now starting to speak up, and that matters. When a loyalist reaches the point of criticism, it lands differently than when a known critic says the same thing. The observation that the king may be making a serious mistake carries real weight coming from that corner. And the framing that Harry and Meghan are now operating in maximum overdrive mode, pushing boundaries to see what they can get away with, emboldened by the complete absence of consequences. That's not just commentary, that's a description of how unchecked behavior works. Consequences shape behavior. Remove the consequences, and you already know what comes next. This isn't complicated.
Told me it gives me PTSD. It's classic Meghan, literally a workplace psychopath, smiling to the public on one side of her face and glowering at you on the secret side. The woman treats anyone she has power over as totally disposable. You are just treated like a tradesman who is there to fix the toilet.
When behavior produces consequences, people adjust. When behavior produces nothing, no pushback, no response, no institutional friction, people keep going, and then they push further. Harry and Meghan are not being subtle about any of this. The candle descriptions use the children's royal titles explicitly in official product copy, distributed to national press outlets. The Sussex.com domain is actively updated and linked directly from the royal family's official website. The Australian tour ran the full royal tour playbook, the imagery, the format, the gravitas, with zero institutional distance from the monarchy. None of it was hidden. All of it was calculated. And the calculation keeps working because nothing keeps stopping it. Charles knows what's happening. The palace briefings confirm it. The decision not to respond is a decision, not an oversight, not inattention. A deliberate, repeated institutional choice to absorb the situation rather than confront it. Whether that choice comes from paternal love, political caution, fear of generating more headlines, or some combination of all three, the outcome is identical. The behavior continues, it escalates, and it reaches its natural endpoint at the centenary of Queen Elizabeth II, where candle boxes and a flowers press release become the logical conclusion of 6 uninterrupted years of zero institutional friction. Then, within days of the centenary, fresh controversy extending the pattern straight into the following week. The MasterChef Australia appearance landed in the middle of a dispute involving the Irwin family, prominent Australian wildlife conservationists with a massive public profile, who apparently responded in ways that ignited yet another public clash. Whether that conflict was managed or completely organic matters less than what it signals. When a brand is declining and attention is the currency it runs on, conflict becomes a resource. New controversy generates new coverage. New coverage keeps the operation alive. And then there's the Sussex.com domain update, and this one is a very specific institutional signal that has not gone unnoticed. Instead of directing Australian tour content to the Archwell Foundation site, the vehicle specifically created to give the couple a charitable identity separate from their royal title, Meghan updated Sussex.com. Sussex is the title. Sussex.com is the title's commercial domain. Archwell was built to be the independent identity, the post-royal brand that didn't lean on the institutional name. Choosing Sussex.com over Archwell is a deliberate choice to put the royal title front and center. It is the commercial deployment of the exact institutional brand the Sandringham Agreement prohibited, and it is linked directly from the royal family's official website. That link is the single most specific institutional anomaly in this entire story. The royal family website is a curated communication tool. It lists the people associated with the crown and what they do. Harry and Meghan are listed. Their listing connects directly to Sussex.com, which is now being updated with commercial tour content. The listing implies institutional association. The content that listing connects to implies something even more uncomfortable: institutional endorsement of a commercial operation built on a title they were asked not to commercially exploit. The contradiction is sitting right there, in plain sight, on the official website of the British monarchy. And the palace's institutional response to all of this, they've briefed that there are no plans to change the listing, no plans to act, no plans to enforce anything. Not a single consequence has followed, and at this point, that silence is its own statement. William's position is never publicly stated because William's position on anything involving his brother is never publicly stated. Multiple royal experts have described his wall of silence as the correct strategic response to a brother who has demonstrated repeatedly.
Catherine at Buckingham Palace yesterday talking to some lovely ladies about how difficult those events can be because it's so loud and she's got a soft voice. And it's just a really quick moment, but it is worth watching, Tash.
I think I find these environments really hard. I've also got a very soft voice, so I always get told
that private communication becomes content. Every attempt at reconciliation, every quiet conversation, every private moment, it has a way of ending up in a book, a documentary, or a magazine brief. William learned that lesson, and he has not forgotten it. But his position hasn't been invisible either. It's been characterized by Charlotte Griffith, by those close to him who have spoken to the press, and by every single observable decision his operation has made. Ring-fenced communications, no external PR crossover, non-attendance at the documentary premiere, consistent, calculated, deliberate distance from any suggestion of accommodation. The message is clear even without a single public word attached to it. William's position is that the titles should go, the listing should be removed, and the Sandringham Agreement should actually mean something and actually be enforced. Charles's position, shaped by illness, by paternal instinct, by the political calculation of a man who understands how bad the optics of a public family war can get, is to absorb the hits and keep moving. To roll with it, to hope the storm passes. But 6 years in, the storm hasn't passed. It has intensified. And the gap between William's position and Charles's position is the single most consequential fault line inside the British monarchy right now. That gap is exactly what the Centenary Day put on full display, and it did so without a single person having to explain it. On one side, one future king. A man who is actively, deliberately, quietly building an institution designed to outlast his father's decisions. A man who showed up to Buckingham Palace on his grandmother's centenary, stood in that courtyard, and represented the crown with the full weight of everything that institution is supposed to mean. And somewhere in that same day, he watched, because you can be certain he was fully aware, as the candle boxes went out to influencers carrying the children's royal titles in the product descriptions, as the Flowers press release landed at Town and Country, as the Sussex operation ran its centenary playbook in full public view, he watched. He noted. And he is drawing conclusions about what he will do when the institutional authority is finally, fully, irreversibly his. On the other side, one current king unwell in ways the public is only partially aware of, managing serious health challenges that the palace has disclosed selectively, pausing cancer treatment to fulfill the obligations of a state visit, because the institution demands it, even when the body is struggling to keep up. A man absorbing the day's Sussex operation without a single word of public response. Not because he doesn't see it, not because he doesn't understand what it means, but because the personal weight of what a full institutional confrontation with his younger son would cost him emotionally, publicly, politically, is a weight he has repeatedly chosen not to lift. And that choice has a price. Every day the choice is made, the price compounds. Because here is what the absence of consequences has produced in documented, time-stamped, publicly verifiable form. The Sandringham Agreement, the agreement that was supposed to define the terms of the Sussex exit, that was supposed to establish the boundaries of what the titles could and could not be used for, has been violated repeatedly. The children's royal titles have appeared in commercial product copy. The Sussex.com domain has been actively updated with commercial content and linked from the royal family's official website. The Australian tour deployed the full visual and institutional language of a royal tour without a single word of distance from the palace. The Flowers press release went to Town and Country on the day of the centenary, the candle boxes went to influencers on the day of the centenary, and the palace issued no response to any of it. This is not ambiguity. This is not a grey area. This is a documented pattern of conduct that has been met consistently and repeatedly. with institutional silence. And that silence has functioned as permission. Now go back to the Queen. Because this story does not make full sense without going back to her. Hardman's sources are unambiguous. She knew. She saw what was happening. She detected the narcissistic tendencies in Meghan's conduct. She was left genuinely distressed after those phone calls, the ones where Harry shouted about security and family dynamics, the ones that became so overwhelming that she needed people present just to get through them. She had people present specifically to protect her during interactions with the couple. She watched the relationship deteriorate from that initial, generous, thoughtful, carefully considered welcome, the patronages she selected with real care, the platforms she offered, the genuine effort she made to bring Meghan meaningfully into the institution, all the way through to the Netflix documentary, the memoir, the legal operations, the press briefings, and the full commercial deployment of everything the institution had given them. And in January 2020, she tried to draw the line. The Sandringham Summit, the agreement, the specific terms designed to create a boundary that would protect the institution, protect the titles, and give the couple a defined path forward that didn't involve burning everything down behind them. That line was supposed to hold. It was supposed to mean something. It was supposed to prevent the centenary from becoming exactly what the centenary became. She tried. The line did not hold. And the specific cruelty of the centenary, if cruelty is the right word for something this calculated, is that it happened on the day that was supposed to be entirely, completely, and exclusively about honouring her. A day when the working royals gathered at Buckingham Palace and did what the institution exists to do. Catherine found Tony Gladhill, an eight-year-old widower, who showed up carrying his late wife's final request and gave him her full, genuine, unhurried attention. Her hand over his, her voice soft, her presence completely, unreservedly real. No photographer briefed in advance, no magazine told afterward, no press release timestamped to maximize the centenary coverage window. Just a woman doing what the institution, at its best, actually looks like. And at the same moment, the same day, the same hours, the same centenary, the candle boxes were arriving at influencers' doors. The children's royal titles were in the product descriptions. The flowers press release was landing at Town and Country, carefully framed, specifically timed, designed to insert Harry's name into the centenary coverage in a way that positioned him as a devoted grandson, honouring a beloved grandmother. The word privately was in the article. The press release that produced the article was not private. The contradiction was not acknowledged. The coverage ran anyway. Both of those things are now in the archive, permanently, time-stamped to the same day. Catherine's hand on Tony Gladhill's hands is in that archive. The Flowers press release is in that archive. The Candlebox influencer content is in that archive. The Sussex.com update is in that archive. The royal family website link connecting directly to the commercial Sussex content is in that archive. The palace's briefing that there are no plans to change any of it is in that archive. All of it is sitting there, side by side, from the same day, telling the same story without a single editorial word required to connect the dots. The contrast does not need commentary. It is the archive's permanent verdict on the centenary of Queen Elizabeth's birth, not opinion, not spin, not the perspective of people who have already made up their minds. Just the documented record of what actually happened in the two spaces that defined that day's royal story, the palace courtyard and the influencer gift box, and the institution is now caught between two realities that cannot coexist indefinitely. The reality, William represents an institution with enforceable boundaries, titles that mean something because they carry genuine obligations, a Sandringham agreement that functions as more than a suggestion, and the reality the current situation has produced, where the titles are in the candle descriptions, the domain is updated with commercial tour content, the website lists the couple with links to their commercial operation, and the palace has briefed that no change is coming. Those two realities are going to collide. The only question is when and under whose institutional authority the collision happens. Because William is watching. William is always watching. And William is not Charles. He does not have the same paternal weight pulling him toward accommodation. He does not have the same political instinct for absorbing rather than confronting. He has spent 6 years building a wall of silence specifically because he understands with absolute clarity what happens when you don't. He has watched every private moment become content. He has watched the institution absorb hit after hit without response. He has watched the centenary of his grandmother's birth become the occasion for a candle launch and a flowers press release. He is drawing conclusions, and when the institutional authority is his, those conclusions will have consequences, real ones, the kind that shape behavior because they cannot be absorbed and moved past. The kind the current situation has been completely missing for 6 years. She tried to prevent this. The woman whose centenary it was, whose grave received the flowers, whose nickname appeared in the candle descriptions, she saw it coming and she tried to stop it. The line she drew in January 2020 was not a bureaucratic formality. It was a woman in her final years, still sharp, still watching, still carrying the full weight of an institution she had spent her entire life building, trying to protect that institution from a trajectory she had already identified and already understood. The line did not hold, but the record did, and the record does not forget. It does not soften with time. It does not become more favorable with distance. It sits in the archive, time-stamped, permanent, and completely indifferent to how anyone would prefer to be remembered. The flowers are on the grave, the press release is in the town and country archive, the candles are in the influencer boxes, the royal titles are in the product descriptions. Catherine's hand is on Tony Gladhill's hands. The palace has briefed that no response is coming. William is watching. Charles is absorbing. And the centenary of Queen Elizabeth II's birth is now permanently and irrevocably part of the record of what the Sussex operation is, what it does, and what it has been allowed to become. She knew. She saw it. She tried to stop it. And the saddest part of the entire centenary story is not the candles, or the press release, or the titles in the product copy. The saddest part is that she was right about all of it, and the institution she spent her life building is still, 6 years later, trying to figure out what to do about the fact that she was right. That is the centenary's real story. And it is now in the archive, next to the flowers, next to the candles, next to Catherine's hand on an 8-year-old widower's hands, permanent, time-stamped, and waiting for the moment when someone with the institutional authority to act on it finally decides that the time has come. If this full breakdown had you seeing the complete picture, every layer, every contrast, every unanswered question, hit that like button right now. Subscribe so you are there when the next chapter of this story lands, because this is far from over. Share this with someone who needs to see the full story laid out. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one.